en los siglos XVII y XVIII, y comenzamos con la intervención del doctor Loris Serafini, que es graduado en Archivos, Paleografía y Diplomática en la Universidad de Trieste, con estudios completados en Londres. Él es actualmente director de la Fundación Papa Luciani, en Canale d'Agordo, y miembro del Comité Científico de la Fundación Vaticana Juan Pablo I. Nos hablará sobre el maestro de la Orden, Juan Tomás de Boxadors, y la Orden de Predicadores en Alemania. Cuando quiera. Gracias.
Gracias. Thank you very much. I prefer to speak in English because I can understand Spanish, but not to speak. My discussion is about the figure of Juan Tomás de Boxadors, y Sureda de San Martín, the province and the congregation of that period in 18th century in the area of Germany. We can see a picture of him as he was a cardinal protector of the order of Dominican, but just unfortunately for some weeks, because when he was appointed, after a short time, he died in 1780. What's important in 18th century, there was, we are quite at the end of the most important period of the provinces of the German provinces of Teutonia, Saxonia, and Congregatia Austriaca. The two ones I studied about. Together with Tibor, we had Father William in Rome. We have analyzed the history, the documents, the items conserved in the archives in Rome, especially about these two provinces which were very important in the history of the Germany, and about especially the series Tertia Decima of the archives, in which, in the convent of Santa Sabina on the Colle Aventino, there are important archive series. For example, Epistole variaque documenta Magistro Generali Missa, Relaciones de Statu Provinciae, Scrutinia electionis vel super retentione seo absolutione provincialium, Acta capitulorum provincialium, Personalia diversorum annorum assignationes dispense, etc., Lites and Catalogus omnium fratrum. These kind of documents were particularly important to analyze the relationship between the master of the order and the friars in Germany. We have found some themes, some subjects about this, and it's important to underline that we cannot have a precise answer to all the askings we had about Boxadors. Why? Because the documents are not complete, the items sent to him, and the answers are not always connected. And let us now examine the main themes covered in the documentation and how the master of the order addressed the various issues based on what was found in the archives. Let us keep in mind that Master de Boxadors was on a canonical visitation of the Spanish provinces from September 1760 till autumn of 1764. And for this period he appointed a substitute or a vicar general, Father Giovanni Domenico Villavecchia, who was also the order procurator general, and the order had been informed, of course, of his absence, but sometimes Boxadors had the capability to answer by himself to some important questions. In the registers containing summaries of the master's responses to individual provincials or friars, we are not always able to find some topics discussed. The first theme we can afford is the difficulties between the communication difficulties between the center, Rome, and the periphery, the German provinces, especially due to the long distances to be covered on foot, and they need to travel to Rome. Various cases are recorded in the documentation. Difficulty in understanding between the master of order and or the general curia regarding the difficulties in reaching Rome. Similarly, the difficulty in understanding between the prior provincial and the monks, who often request dispensation from traveling to the chapter site. For example, we can analyze the case of prior provincial of Saxonia Johannes Nepomucenus Müller, who in 1758 obtained a medical certificate from Dr. Valentin Joseph Grill of the Princes of Thun, and the doctor argued that the prior should not travel to the general chapter of the order due to the serious illness affecting him: arthritis, cardiac spasms, constant dizziness, digestive and nervous problems. We are not sure that it's all real effective problems, but many times these medical certificates were sent to the master in order to avoid this long travel to Rome. Or the case of Friar Hieronymus Dexler, prior provincial of Saxonia, who on the 15th February 1777 from Weinburg responded to the master of the order, saying he was shocked by Cardinal's words, because the Cardinal, in fact, maintained that Friar Dexler had not come to Rome for the general chapter. He would have been suspended from his office as a prior. Father Dexler thus reiterated his dispense request for inability to make the trip, not only for financial reasons, but also due to this precarious state of health, and therefore asked to be excused. The cardinal in this case was very hard with him, and is quite too much if the friar was really sick. Another case is that of Friar Joachimus Kurz, prior provincial of Saxonia, who on the 17th October 1767 wrote from Landshut to the master of the order, complaining about the fatigue of visiting the various convents and the burdens of his office due precisely to the long distances he had to travel on foot. Or again, the case of Friar Hieronymus Dexler, prior provincial, who on the 17th October 1773 wrote to the master from Valle Sancta Catarina, expressing the requests of the nuns of the Freiburg and Riegel, who were experiencing financial difficulties due to the long distances they had to travel for visits. On the contrary, to what we have seen so far, there was also a desire to undertake a journey to Rome, motivated instead by the desire to see the eternal city. This is the example of Friar Magnus Keiler, who from Bamberg on the 7th February 1769 wrote to the master asking for his blessing on the journey he was about to undertake to the eternal city, passing through the tomb of Saint Dominic in Bologna. Another subject, for example, there is here an item, a request to go to Rome from Friar Dexler, and we have no answer from the master. We haven't found. Another theme is the tense relations with the Lutheran world. In 1759, the friars of Regensburg in the province of Saxonia had to answer to the master for an accusation of selling wine, an activity that would violate the cloister. The reasoning was that the sale was actually very modest, since the convent's very little wine was needed to support the convent itself, due to the great poverty caused by the looting carried out by the Lutherans. The informer in this case was a poor lawyer, Johannes Orpheus, in debt, hired by the Lutherans to use his denunciations to prevent the sale of wine of the convent. On the 4th of August, the master finally banned the sale of wine, but the prior, willing to obey, asked what should be done with all the beer stored and ready to be given to the poor waiting in the city. The following year, the friars returned on the subject, complaining about the prohibition of selling wine and beer imposed by the Master General, since it guaranteed that convent a minimum subsistence. That's a problem because Lutheran wanted in that period to fight against the Dominican, but also the convents had the little economy with the selling of wine. And the selling of wine was a problem because it was a meeting with lay people, and the master didn't want, even if it was creating serious financial problems to the convent. A third subject, is the punishment inflicted on friars and fathers who do not respect their rule or vows. In cases found in the province of Saxonia, we find that a rather harsh punishment was often imposed, often involving a lengthy imprisonment. For example, in 1758, a request was made to the master for the release of the cleric friar Dominic Vanner of the Freiburg convent, who had been imprisoned for 4 years for breaking his vow of chastity. And the 8th April, the master wrote to the prior that if the cleric had behaved well, he could be released. Or in 1759, in the case of a Friar Deocarus Horn, who had abandoned the habit under the pretext of illness and of the death of his mother, eloping with a girl. Or again in 1769, in the case of a Friar Josephus Schwarz, who had broken a vow and was imprisoned and subjected to the penance. In the latter case, which occurred in Bamberg, a transfer to another province and convent was requested. A fourth subject is apostasy from the order, rarely from the faith. From the faith is more rarely than from the order, but it was found both of them. There are 2 cases of apostasy found. In January 1759, a request from reinstatement was made for Friar Nepomucenus Naumann, punished for apostasy. As stated in the register of the Master of the Order, the Master replied on 20th January 1759, cum transitu ad partes hereticas, pro suo delicto videatur, venerandus prior satis fecisse, quantum ad penas possis, a tamen a penis previsis, cito non est absolvendus, ut magis et magis agnoscat gravitatem sui delicti. Is this clear? So only on the 1st November was the friar totally absolved. In 1760, the provincial prior sent a letter to the master seeking permission to ordain the lay friar of Freiburg convent, Friar Dominicus Vamer, who had already apostatized from the order and been imprisoned for 4 years. It's a long time, 4 years. However, since his conduct had been impeccable for 7 years, the prior asked to ordain him to priesthood so that his elderly parents could see him as a priest before their deaths. The master responded on the 1st March that he could be ordained after a year of penance. Another theme is escape from the convents. The cases are as varied as the motivation are. We are encountered several, including the case of Friar Josephus Schwarz of Bamberg Convent, who wrote to the master of the order in 1769 to be released from prison and the penance imposed on him by his prior court for fleeing home because he was not appointed lecturer. On the case of Friar Hieronymus Dexler, prior provincial of Saxonia, who wrote to the master of the order in 1773 about the escape from the Kimberg monastery of the lay nun Osanna Jelic. We don't know the answer because it was not found in the archives. There are the, excuse for the mistake for the pictures, but they are the items of this nun, Osanna Jelic, and her history. Then the reform of convents are always in a theme, a subject in all the history of the order, but in 18th century it was important after Enlightenment, for example, and just before the French Revolution. During the period under consideration, the need of for convent reform was becoming apparent. For example, that of Würzburg in the province of Saxonia, where Friar Godefridus Stapf, former prior, wrote to the master of the order in 1773 complaining about the laxity caused by the comfortable and relaxed lifestyle led by some friars. This is the item. And disputes. There are some frictions, that is, disputes with the secular clergy among the friars themselves, between friars and nuns, and with the Franciscans, of course. There is no shortage of friction either. Those with the secular clergy, characterized by legal acts of the lawsuits that pit the friars against the secular clergy, often over administrative or territorial uses, as in the case of 1763. The case pitted the recently built Landshut Friary with its prior, Father Pius Bacca, against the local parish priest of St. Iudocus regarding their right to distribute the Eucharist. It was important for the secular clergy to maintain their rights, but also for Dominican, the new friary, for viaticum and extreme unction during the Easter holiday, and the burial of the friars in the cemetery. That's an interesting theme, because the friar wanted to bury their own friars or workers in the cloister cemetery, but the parish priests didn't want to allow without their special permission. So there were some critic situation. But to circumvent the demands on the local parish priest and bishop regarding burial licenses, the friars had the right to bury their companions in the conventual church, which did not require parish permissions. The question followed by the master of the order gives reason to the autonomy of the friars, with a response of the 19th November 1763. Disputes also occasionally arise between friars and nuns, as in the case of 1763 between the friars of Augsburg and the nuns of Santa Catarina Vallensis. Disputes with the Franciscans were also not absent, documented by the Sentin in 1759 of some publication issued by the Franciscan against the Dominicans. Disputes among some friars are also not lacking. The Congregatio Austriaca preserves a file relating to Friar Casimiro Ducati of the convent of Trento, who in 1772 was the subject of the controversy within the community, as various accusations were made against him by his friars for having caused the expulsion of some of his friars from the convent and the Principality of Trento. This is the items. So, and another very particular subject is the requests for permission to visit family members. It was a theme for a lot of orders, not only for Dominican ones, but in convents, nuns and friars sometimes need to be able to meet their relatives, as in the case of Felix Anton Baron de Weitenau of Neuburg, father of Maria Theodora, accepted as a nun in the monastery of Medringen, in the Duchy of Neuburg. In 1767, Felix Anton asked the master of the order on behalf of himself, his wife, and his daughter to be able to visit her on occasion. In a letter dated on the 18th March, the master responded on the 9th May that such permission was reserved to the Supreme Pontiff and to the Holy See. And it's normal because of cloistry, it was not possible, female especially. And the use of German vernacular in Marian preaching and publication especially is another theme. We are in a Lutheran context. We are in a Protestant as well. And we are after Enlightenment, and there is the need, is born a new need to have more possibilities to write, to publish in local language for the order. And an interesting aspect is the question of the use of this language as evidenced by a letter from the preacher Friar Antoninus Eisenbart from the Augsburg convent regarding the language used in preaching, namely German, or the use of German language in books of Marian devotion as evidenced in a document from 1768 in which Friar Antoninus Eisenbart recommends to the master of the order the approval of Marian devotional books written in German. We have no answer, but we think that he allowed this. And the the document. The subject of war. I found interesting citation of an important war in some documents. As unfortunately happens in all eras, the theme of war also surfaces in these years. In 1764, some friars of the Mergentine Friary asked the master of the order for the possibility of renominating their sub-prior Engelbert Müller, although not provided by the rules due to the contingent war raging in the province. The reference is likely to the war fought between 1756 and 1763 between the major European powers, Great Britain as Prussia against France and Austria, with their allies Russia, Sweden, Poland, and Saxony, and later also Spain, which would transform the international balance of power in favor of England, Prussia, and Russia. The shortage of secular clergy. Even in the 18th century, there was a shortage of secular clergy in Germany. This is evident from a document sent from Friar Joachimus Kurz, prior of Saxony, to the master, who from Landshut in 1764 requested that the deacon Franciscus Link be ordained as priest prematurely due to a shortage of priests. Then we are quite on the end of the history of the 18th century order under Master Boxadors, and we are close to the suppression of convents by state order. In the documentation of the province of Saxonia, we find a reverberation of the monastic suppression of Austrian Empire. From Constance on the 22nd December 1777, Friar Carolus Welf, prior provincial of Saxonia, wrote to the master informing him that Empress Maria Theresia of Austria intended to suppress the monastery of Riegel, which was burdened by debts. Okay. The confessional service for Dominican nuns was one of the most important services for the nuns, and the need to find a confessor for Dominican nuns was a constant concern. In April 1764, Friar Jadacus Arlinger, confessor of Weinhofen in Swabia, wrote to the master asking him to renew his license as confessor to the nuns, granted by the master on 21st April. In 1771, Friar Barnabas Böhmer prior provincial of Saxony, asked the master to extend the faculty of confessor to Friar Hieronymus Heiss at the request of the nuns of Pfullendorf, Julio Magensis. At the end, also some case of crime. Finally, a case of infanticide and simony is also documented. On 8 April 1768, Friar Vincentius Schliers, prior in Eichstätt, wrote to the master of the order asking for advice as a confessor on how to handle the case of a canon deacon who had killed the child he had with a girl by having him born with the midwife's place, and whether he had committed simony in paying his brother-in-law by acquiring a vacant benefice. There are very rare cases in the documentation, 1 or 2 cases found. Then the last, to the conclusion, yeah? Yes. What is important, that other documentation are found in Relaciones de Statut Provincia, in Scrutinia Electionis ver super retentione seu absolutione provincialium, where all the friars prior were confirmed by the master of the order. We have found both the asking and the answer. I don't tell about the cases, but that is important. And yes, there are the different cases from 1757 till 1777. Then the Acta Capitulorum Provincialium, where there are a lot of notice about the name of the friars and the convents, together with the catalogs of the monks that are very important to build remake the history of the order in Germany of this period. In conclusion, we can consider Master Boxadors' works with great caution, based on information drawn from the petitiones registers, which are summaries of the master's responses to various requests from convents or provincial priors. From a general perspective, we find a course of action based on good balance, prudence, and moderation, especially in judging friars guilty or breaking the rules of oaths in disagreements and disputes. When it came to defending the good of the order, the master proved fair and decisive. We also find great prudence in his approach to dealing with Lutherans at the time when they were considered merely heretics. His response to provocation was prudent, without excess, and sought to avoid confrontation. Regarding requests from breaching the cloisters to favor power figures, the master is less than accommodating and declares he has no decision-making power. Sometimes, but rarely, he refused requests such as those from the Regensburg convent, which intends to sell wine, putting to the survival of the cloister at risk. On one occasion, we find him harsh when a newly elected prior refuses to attend the general chapter in Rome, citing health problems. In this case, the master seems inflexible, almost lacking empathy towards his brother, even though such a long and dangerous journey could have been an excellent excuse for not attending it. Overall, I would judge the master's actions positively, placing them within a balance that recognizes at least two virtues, of justice and prudence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Muchas gracias por la intervención. La verdad es que es una nueva aportación archivística. En principio él se refería a esta importante serie tertiadécima del Archivo General de la Orden de Predicadores en Santa Sabina, pero evidentemente la ponencia ha ido más allá de la descripción para, por una parte, presentarnos las posibilidades de rastrear pues, esa normatividad o esa circulación, efectivamente, tanto de cuestiones legales como de los propios frailes, y por otra parte, evidentemente, este balance que nos hace desde una provincia, vamos a ver si se compadece con las otras provincias de la época, efectivamente, del Maestro de la Orden, Juan Tomás de Boxadors. De nuevo, muchas gracias, profesor.
Gracias. Muchas gracias.
Lilian.